Welcome to a Roundtable talk with autism moms on the Barefoot Autism Warriors podcast. You might have been wondering, where are the moms who actually turn their children around from nonverbal, gibberish, non-speaking to communicating in actual words and vocalizing and talking to family members? Well, today I'll let them tell you about that themselves.
He used to do a lot of just kind of like gibberish vocalizations, couldn't figure out, is there language in there? Is he actually trying to communicate something? We couldn't figure it out, and he never does that anymore. It's only actual language and actual words, and he's looking in our eyes, telling us something, whether it's he needs to go to the bathroom, or he wants a drink of water, or he wants to go play. He's communicating, and it is the most beautiful thing.
And you're also going to hear from Miryam, who has a daughter, and she was worried, like so many other autism moms, about whether or not her child would ever be able to communicate her needs. And it's one of the biggest frustrations for moms, so I wanted to talk about moms who are actually doing this in real time.
She's telling us everything and telling us what she wants to eat and that she has to go to the bathroom, and I really think that has to do with my inner child work.
So this conversation actually got really interesting, because these are some of the things that seemingly is so hard to deal with when you're trying to turn symptoms around. Children that are older, and topics that's been triggering in the autism community for the moms who've been following me when I left the New Age and came to Jesus. That came up as well, because Miryam is not a Christian, and she came into the turnaround process being a bit triggered by the way that I give the glory to God, and the way that the prayer meditations are actually Christian prayer meditations, and how we use prayer and the Bible in the turnaround process. So we had a conversation about that. So if you're a New Ager, or if you're not Christian and you feel like you can't do the turnaround process because of that, I really think you'll enjoy this episode. So I am here with my fellow mamas from the turnaround process, the turnaround community, and we see each other on a daily basis in the community when you go through that turnaround process. And what I really am so grateful for being able to do today is have a conversation with these amazing moms who are right in the thick of it. They're in the middle of it, and they are actually in the different stages of the turnaround process. I really think it's interesting to talk to each other about what that feels like. So rather than just having conversations before we get into the process and after we've completed the process, it's really interesting to have conversations about healing when we are in the process of healing. So those are the kinds of conversations that we are having today. And with me today, I have Miryam, I have Lena, I have Adriene, and I have Rosaline. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things: the ups, the downs, the struggles, the realizations and aha moments we have had and still are having, in the hopes that when we tell our stories as autism moms, we can bring some insight and some hope to other moms who feel alone, feel in despair, feel like they're completely overwhelmed by all these symptoms that sometimes can just steal every hour of the day, and the worries that we can have when that happens. So I would like to open up this conversation. We spoke about the fact that we wanted to be like a tea date, a coffee date, where we just sit down and have this conversation together. So I'd like to open up the conversation by asking, what was the situation that made you realize that you needed to change the situation, so that you needed to turn this around? And when you answer, could you talk a little bit about who you are and where you're from as well? So say your name and where you're from, so that we get a little bit of an insight of who we are talking to, who are we meeting today, and what was that point of no return where you just realized something needs to change. If we start with you, Miryam, would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. My name's Miryam. I'm from Canada, British Columbia specifically. And the point of no return, I had been doing a lot of things, of course, as we all were and have been, to help my daughter. She was just before her 3rd birthday, I think, when I reached out to Minka, and she was not walking still and not talking, and had some other issues going on, was just really far behind. And nothing was really helping. She's always moved forward at a slow pace, but nothing was really progressing it in the way that I wanted it to. So that's what was going on with her. And then, so I felt that pressure of like her age. I just was like, I need to do more than what I'm doing, or I won't basically forgive myself, was the feeling I felt. And then, you know, in retrospect, looking back now that I'm diving into healing myself, things were just really going downhill for me and my husband. We were really divided, and we were no longer very close, and I was increasingly irritable, and definitely had at least one notable angry outburst that was really shocking to me and not the person I thought I was or wanted to be. So that's where I was at before I got on a call with you, Mika.
And so those are some of the things that we all experience, I think, at some point. And it's also the things that we don't really talk about to a lot of people, because it's not something that we're proud of. It's something that's so many of us are embarrassed about, and we think we are the only ones, where in fact it's so normal. So what were some of the thoughts and feelings that went through your body, your system, your head? If I'm to go back and visit that time in your life and I'm a fly on the wall, take us back and talk to us about what was that, what was the situation, what happened, and what were the thoughts and feelings that you had back then?
Yeah, like back then in general, or are you thinking in my darkest kind of?
Yeah, but
moments?
in that darkest moment where you realized something needs to change.
Yeah, well, like I said, divided is really the word that I would say for me and my husband. I was weighing everything, his free time, my free time. I was thinking really negative thoughts about him. And then, of course, as soon as I had those thoughts, like I hate you, thinking that I hate you to my husband. And then as soon as I had those thoughts, then turning that on myself and feeling really guilty about that. And just feeling like despair of whether or not I could handle this, like this, you know, potentially having a child that won't ever be independent, and all that meant. So I felt like I'm a positive person, so I would pick myself up, and I have lots of tools and did. And so there would be lots of ups and downs, but yeah, in those dark moments, it was definitely a lot of self-hatred, and then projecting onto my husband and worry about what my daughter's future was going to look like. And if I was missing something, like having a lot of guilt that I wasn't going to do something, that, because you read all the amazing stories online, right? Of course, we all turn to that, and yeah, just had a tremendous like guilt that I was going to miss something that could really change the outcome of her life.
Yeah. Wow. And what were some of the symptoms that worried you the most in your child back then?
Yeah, well, like I said, for Ash, or for my daughter, she never had a regression, but it was just a really, really slow progression. And so, I mean, the biggest things for me were, was she going to walk? Is my daughter going to walk? Because no one can tell you that. Is my daughter ever going to talk? And so those things were huge for me. And then sleep, I mean, we're still dealing with it now, but it was really bad back then. It was up for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night. So, you know, is she ever going to sleep? And people would say, oh, you know, when she turns 2, she'll start sleeping through the night, or like when you night wean. And it's like none of the things people told me were happening. And it's my first and only child. So I think that in itself was really like trying to be like, it's okay, don't be hard on us. She's only 1. She'll, you know, but then keep hitting these places that she's not getting there. She's not getting there. Yeah. And now I'm remembering when in, like, I'd say the darkest moment was when I first, like when she was 1, and because we kind of set a time frame for ourselves, like when she's 1, if she's not crawling yet, we got to go to the doctors. Like we've been kind of more homesteady people, out of the mainstream a bit. And we just, you know, had midwives and have gone to more natural approaches of health our whole lives. And anyways, I just remember my body went into full shock. I remember, like, we live by a lake and it's hot in the summer and I couldn't swim, which I'm an avid swimmer. It was so cold all the time. So yeah, that was a feeling, like really my whole body was cold and in shock. When we first, I knew something was, something's different here.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that first part of the wake-up call. It's almost like drowning. So that analogy is really, it's beautiful but painful. And I was wondering, Adriene, do you have a similar, when you hear this, what comes to mind? And just for everyone to meet you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what comes up for you when you hear this?
Well, I'm Adriene. I'm in Colorado. My son is the reason that I'm part of this community, and he's 12. And so I feel like I might be on the older end of compared to some of the other moms there. So we've been walking this for quite a while because he had a regression when he was about 2.5. And I have 5 kids. He's my second kid. But Miryam, when you were talking, the thing that kept coming up that I was like, oh yeah, us too, was I'm a really positive person too. And I found myself being so full of anger and anxiety in a way I just didn't recognize myself. Like, this isn't who I am. This is who I've never been this person. Where is all this coming from? I had a lot of victim mentality, like everything was somebody's fault, whether it was, you know, medical choices we'd made or places we lived or food that we consumed, like everything was somebody's fault. And I think I was trying to pass a lot of blame instead of calmly thinking about what is actually going on here and what changes can we make. It's so much easier to make it somebody else's fault than actually take any sort of responsibility. Yeah.
And that feeling of drowning, or that feeling of dread, and also this feeling of almost not being yourself, because I remember that as well. It's so interesting because the whole healing journey for me and for my child was about finding out who I was and wasn't, dying to my old self, like letting my old life die. And that's a theme that I see in a lot of moms. Is that a similar situation? Is that something that resonates with you?
Yes, I really had to evaluate where my identity was coming from, what I was clinging to that I didn't need to cling to. Yeah, I'm a believer in God. Jesus is my savior, and whenever I put anything before that, everything goes wrong. My identity is in Jesus, and that's it. And everything else I can hold loosely. And but I had such a tight grip on how this whole parenting thing should be, and how my views medically, and all of these things that just were getting in the way. I thought I was doing everything right, and this still happened. So therefore, it's someone else's fault, and I have to start blaming. And I learned that's not actually how it goes all the time.
And what was it then if it wasn't that? Just to give us a little clue, I know that's not something we can cover in just one sentence, just to open that conversation.
I think I had a lack of awareness about what was going on inside of me. The tone that I was setting in our home. Um, I did have a lot of victim mentality. So I wanted to be taken care of. I didn't really want to take care of other people. I wanted things done for, I'm the youngest in my family. So I grew up being taken care of a lot, and I had a great childhood. But I think some of that seeped into my adult life. And there were some things I just wasn't taking responsibility for, specifically my own thought patterns. Like, what am I allowing myself to dwell on mentally? What things am I thinking that I'm actually believing and sitting with for a while that I maybe don't need to believe? And that influences how I spend my time and my day and how I treat the people around me.
Mm. Wow. So, and it's like one of the things that I was super embarrassed about was my bitterness and my blame as well, because I realized that I had been painting myself into a corner, and I was sitting in that corner bitter about having done that. And so I would be asking out into the room, into my life, and to my husband, why is there no space for me? Why does nobody see me and my needs? Why aren't anybody helping me with this child? Can't they see we need help? Rather than understanding that everything around me showed me how I had left myself and how I had become bitter, and how I needed to change and how I needed to be there for myself, because everyone felt extremely unsafe in my company because I couldn't take care of me. So how on earth was I supposed to take care of the children that I had? So that sense of self-abandonment, I feel that led to autism, because I detached from my body, from my family, from feelings, from trauma, from the past. And healing my son and healing myself brought me back to myself and also to that responsibility. And it's been painful. I was wondering, so when we're talking about these points of no return and leaving ourselves and our own role in autism, and the shame and the grief, feeling like we've become someone that we don't recognize, is quite far from what we talk about in the autism community. Normally it's about diets and tests and functional medicine and what foods to give and toxicity and mitochondrial health and all these things that and I did that too. We grasp at those straws to try and fix the symptom. What has been a different approach for you? We will get to where you're at in the journey, both spiritually and practically, and with symptoms and your own healing journey. But for you, Miryam, I was wondering, what's been your point of change? When did you realize that things started to change? What's been your biggest changes and wins in this past year? That's, well, so far, the journey so far. And what do you think, from your perspective, has shifted things for you?
Mm-hmm. The thing I noticed most immediately was my irritability decreasing, or actually, it felt like, I say this to people, it felt like overnight I was not irritated at my husband anymore, which was just bizarre, because how can that be? I was like, wow, my mind sure is fickle. And so that's been a huge thing, is like, I know we're here to, you know, people might be watching this to hear about the progress with our kids, but I think I'm still in the foundational place of like, I just did a post to our Telegram group saying like, I feel like just even the last couple of weeks, me and my husband have come out of repair and we're moving into like a safe place where it feels like we have each other. So that's just huge. And I know that my daughter feels that. I know, I know that safety is a big thing for her. And I think that's a big piece of his sleep. Is feeling safe, and how can you feel safe if your parents are at odds like that, which was my upbringing big time. And then I don't even know if I'm answering your question, Ninka, but I'll just keep going, okay, with my train of thought. And then, yeah, the other piece, like, I just love what Lena is saying about the inner child. Like, that just feels so real for me, so necessary. I'm also a cortisol type, so I've been performing my whole life. I've been great at every job. I've been promoted into the manager roles. Everyone can count on me. I'm the person everyone calls for help. And I just haven't been taking care of myself. So that's been a big change. And I'm actually like, with the every time I do like an inner child date, or we celebrate after our reflection guides, I end up dancing, and I'm just like by myself dancing and having the best time. And it's just, I can see that that's the person that I am under all this responsibility and this like performance. And so that's really big, is like just learning who she is, and leaning into that. And I think for my daughter, I'm really blessed that we actually haven't experienced the tantrums and stuff. But what I've noticed on that kind of emotional side is, like, she's a little bit more sensitive, is the word I would say. Like, she'll get sad easy. Like, if a dog jumped up on her, she'll be sad, and it would take a longer period of time to bring her down. And I can kind of relate that to myself. So I feel like me taking care of myself is impacting that. But I also feel like it's the voice. Like, I feel like she's getting her voice. Like, her words are exploding. And like I said, when I started this, I wasn't sure if my daughter was going to talk. And I was talking to the speech therapist about the iPad thing, and which I knew I didn't want to do because I already wasn't into screens, but I was, trying to be open-minded. And anyway, so she's now narrating our life. She's, it's one or two words, but she's telling us everything and telling us what she wants to eat and that she has to go to the bathroom. And I really think that has to do with my inner child work.
Yeah. And that's so interesting, Miryam. And I know that a lot of moms that I speak to say, I don't have time to focus on me and my healing and my process because my child's not speaking and I'm nervous about their future. Will they ever be able to communicate, have a friend, have a partner, have a job? I don't have the patience, and it can create even guilt to focus on yourself, and fear and feeling like you're wasting time. So could you talk to that a little bit, how those things have been linked for you?
Yeah, like as you're saying that, I'm like, I think it's really important to examine that thought, because we spend a lot of time worrying and a lot of time doing things that don't help. And so I think we do have time for ourselves. And I still struggle with it. Like, doing the inner child dates are so hard. I came up with so many excuses. I couldn't think of what to do. I made it this big deal, and I'm still doing that. But yeah, I just think like stepping back a little bit and questioning whether or not you actually have the time. Like, how much time do we spend scrolling on our phones, or checking out in other ways, which feels necessary when you're not willing to feel your feelings. It feels really necessary to numb out. And I think it's okay to do that in small doses. Like I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
and find the time that you can check in, and then growing your capacity to do that. And how I think it's linked like to her speech. I just like, one thing that brought me in was one of the podcasts you did, Minka, and you were talking about the nervous system and just how our kids hear our heartbeat and our breath. So even someone who's really scientifically based can get that, right? Like really biological. It's like our kids are they're right up against our chest nursing. They're going to match our heart rate. They're going to match our breathing. And so that's your nervous system. So I think that's like a really easy endpoint for people to understand that the changes we make will change our children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I used to say it's like probably 70 to 80% of the whole recovery turnaround process is about our own healing, because we're becoming the interpreters, we're becoming the facilitators by lived experience. And so that's also a goodbye to that whole helplessness that we can feel when we have to go to practitioners all the time, consult tests, ask other moms, finding the answers outside of our own sphere and our own home and our own intuition. And God's guidance is what I lean on a lot too. But so Adriene, how long have you been doing this, and what were some of the most worrying symptoms that you see a change in now? Can you tell us a little bit about your before and after?
Sure. So after my son's regression, both my husband and I both felt really strongly that we were going to pursue healing at all costs. That we weren't going to just roll over and accept that this was our life. And we definitely didn't accept it as a life sentence for our son. So, but then we just ended up jumping into a different kind of hustle where it was all the protocols, biomedical, therapies, all kinds of therapies, supplements, diets. We went to we spent so much money, so much money, and saw very small improvements, but they weren't lasting. We would see like little bits of things, like his language got a little bit better, but then it would go back down. And so we spent about 8 years doing that. And but one of the things that was always there was a lot of screaming, there was a lot of hitting, a lot of wall kicking. And I have 4 other kids, and I was always concerned, like, what's the effect on them? Like living in a household like this with that level of everything's escalated. I know my nervous system was very escalated. So I was irritable and angry and short very often. And that was the biggest thing where I was like, okay, we got to get off this treadmill of protocols and all these things. Like, what's next, Lord? And we kept praying, like, what's going to be the next step here?
If you're listening to this and you're thinking, whoa, this sounds amazing, I want to go through the processes that these amazing moms are going through and see if this can work for me. There's no guarantees, of course. But if you want to talk to me about how that might be possible for you and to come up with a game plan for you, send me an email, contact@barefootautismwarriors.com. The reason why I'm asking you to send me an email is that I know I need that kind of initiative from you, just like I did from these moms, before I can say yes to actually set up a game plan for you. If you feel that it's too much to send an email, I know that I can't help you get there. So send me an email, and we'll set up a call where we can go through your situation and where you want to be a year from now, what's slowing you down, what's holding you back. Now, back to the podcast.
And that was actually whenever I came across you, Minka. So I felt really led to get into the program and see that as the next step. And So when I started concentrating on my own nervous system and my own healing and actually feeling the things that I hadn't been wanting to feel for so many years, that's when we really started to see big changes in our son. And he's calmer now. He speaks more clearly now. He really communicates with us, even with repetitive language, but he's still telling us something every time he's telling us, every time he's talking to us. Um, he used to do a lot of just kind of like gibberish vocalizations, couldn't figure out, is there language in there? Is he actually trying to communicate something? We couldn't figure it out. And he never does that anymore. It's only actual language and actual words. And he's looking in our eyes, telling us something, whether it's he needs to go to the bathroom or he wants a drink of water or he wants to go play. He's communicating. And it is the most beautiful thing. Um, he's such a reflection of whatever is going on inside of me, and like the heart connection that you were talking about, Miryam. One of his favorite things now is he comes up and he's really tall. So whenever he hugs me, his head is right on my heart and he just like snuggles in and puts his ear on my heart and he'll say, I hear your heartbeat. And it's always a reminder of just how connected we are. And whenever I see any symptoms in him, it's always connected to something that I'm feeling and not acknowledging that I'm feeling. Or if I'm not taking care of myself, I always see, like if I stay up too late reading, he's going to be a mess the next day, even though he had a good night's sleep. And it's just incredible how we're connected. And I'm seeing that so clearly now.
And how much patience have you had to have in that process? How long has it been for you?
Well, I've been in the program for 2 years, and patience isn't always my strong suit. So I have struggled with that. I know I've talked about that in the group a little bit. I've struggled with the patience, but seeing those little things happening that I used to consider miracles, and now it's just like, wow, this is the fruit of real healing. It makes it easier to be patient whenever you see those things happening. And then you just get so excited for what could be next.
Yeah.
So
when you look into the future now, what do you see? If you look at adulthood and independence, because one thing that's a longing for us is to hear our children speak, to be able to understand if something is frustrating for them. Can I know what that is so that I can help my child and bond with my child? And another thing is the independence, which is something that is painful, I think, for moms who doesn't have autistic children or haven't had this experience that we have. We look to the future thinking with dread on the day that our children are independent. And for us as moms of these special children, that can be a huge dream. Where do you stand with that now when you look into the future?
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to be really, really future focused and had a lot of dread because I was like, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if he'll ever be able to live independently or be on his own. Um, and honestly, I still don't. But I also know I can't control what's going to happen down the road. It's my job to be faithful with what I'm called to each day, and let the future take care of itself. Just knowing that, like, if each day I'm showing up and I'm doing this work and I'm taking care of myself, so I can then give my son the best of me, and that's all I can really do. I know I can get in mental spirals of thinking about the future, like what's that going to look like, and there can be a lot of fear and anxiety there, but that's not a good place to stay. So I try to focus on whatever is mine today to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. There's a topic I would like just to touch on, Miryam, because when we had our first conversation, I think we already talked a little bit about your spiritual journey and where you are at with that part of the journey in your life. And I know that you're not the only mom who looks at this process, the turnaround possibility, and feel turned off by the fact that many of us are Christian, and I became a Christian, and as you know, I lost a lot of moms when that happened, particularly moms who are not following the same faith as I am. And I just thought it was so beautiful the way that you trusted me and you walk with me, and you still have a different view of the spiritual journey, and you're still seeing a lot of healing and benefits. And you promised me that we could talk about that, because that topic is it's difficult to talk about God. It's difficult to talk about faith. And it's something that sometimes actually create distance between us as moms. And my goal is to try and connect us and to create sisterhoods. So that part of the journey, that aspect, what's been challenging about that, and how have you found peace, and where are you at with it now? Because that, I think, is really so interesting, both for us who are following Jesus and for moms who are not.
Yeah. Okay. Just taking a minute to gather my thoughts. So yeah, it was challenging, and there's been challenging moments, and I've reached out to you, Minka, about it. And where I've come to now, and how I got there, is that ultimately I'm here for healing for myself and for my family, for my daughter. And so that was a big motivation to keep going. And for me, because I have a spiritual outlook on life, I feel it was a little easier for me, because in a way it's just about semantics and different wording of things, and feeling a similar journey and trajectory, and understanding things like feeling called and having faith and trust in a plan. But what has really helped me is I've tried to look at my resistance as any other resistance I would have in this program. So as a self-sabotage pattern. And so anytime I'm having resistance or irritability or anger or frustration, how is that serving me? Like, and why am I doing that? And what would it be like if I felt peaceful and calm and not irritated? Like, what would that change in me? And so I feel like I feel a lot less triggered and irritated by it, just letting it be. And what else? The other piece for me that I learned in that process, like by inquiring, is that I do like to perform, and I wanted you to, Minka, to accept me for who I was and for my own spiritual path, but I actually don't need that. And I know that now. And so I think I can walk alongside all of you and really respect you for exactly your belief system, and still get out of this process so much. Yeah, I think that's kind of sums it up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your trust. And for me, it's like I've always wanted to, so I've always changed things around when I learned new things, and when I found modalities to be outdated, or when I saw that there's a quicker way to get to where we want to go, and when I felt supported. And people often say to me, well, then when are you going to change religion? When are you not going to be talking about Jesus? And I can just say that that's not going to happen. There's no doubt that for me, I am praying for all moms that want me to pray for them. I never pray unless I ask. So we have prayer groups and we have prayer warriors praying over each child that wants, that the mother has allowed us to pray over. And I in my older days, or in the initial phases of coaching, which is a long time ago, I would be irritated, or I just desperate to get moms to do what I wanted them to do. But now I know that this is God's plan, and we are all in different areas and on different paths to where we are supposed to be. And I have nothing to do with that. So I can just talk about what really works for me. And I do believe for me that when I did it on my own, and I did it by my own understanding and all my drive and my research, and without God, without Jesus, I will say, it took me 8 years to get to where I can see moms, they reach that same place in 12 months or 14 months or shorter amounts of time. And so that's what I'm talking about, what works for me so that things are sped up. And I just think it's so important that when we come together and we're different and we have different stories and we have different spiritual backgrounds, that we don't create like a battlefield or a battle zone where we cannot come together, because we know that we are all loved by God and that there's a plan for each of us. And so we can I think we need to come together and inspire each other and walk together and not judge each other and love unconditionally no matter what. So that's really, I think you're such a beautiful example of that. And it really moves me. I mean that so from the bottom of my heart, that you are with us and that you have that courage, because often we want to be like the people that we are around, and it's easy to say, okay, I'm gonna pull out because I don't feel like I belong here. So the courage to stand with who you are and what you are and what you stand for, even though it's different to what I stand for and what I wish, all the way through, you're some strong woman. And I just hope that will inspire other moms, because it's so important. It's so important to grow that strength as well. So thank you so much for that, Miryam. Adriene, the patience that you've had to become that person, that's just so admirable. For you now, with that much time and that much work and that much healing on the back burner, like that's your toolbox. What is next for you? What are you working on now, and what's the goal that you've got for the upcoming year? And how can we learn from you there, other than patience, which is something that all of us need more of?
My goal for this upcoming year, I think it's recognizing my self-sabotage patterns faster so I can make changes sooner. My son's symptoms have gotten so much better, but the one thing that still happens that is my goal to fix this coming year is the whenever he has some anxiety and kind of some territorial anxiety. And if his little brother gets a little too close to him, sometimes he'll just kind of hit him for no good reason. And it's never hard, but it's still a pattern I want to stop. So I want all my kids to feel safe with everyone in the family. So I know there's something there to uncover, and I've been working on that, and we've made progress, but it's still happening more often than I want. So that's my goal.
And what are some of the tools and some of the work that you know works for you that you're going to implement in order to get there?
The journal is huge. And I resonate with what Lena was saying about whenever things are going really well and you get a little too relaxed. So I, a journal for, months and months and months, and then be like, I've got a good handle on this now. Maybe I can set this aside. It's a bit of a hassle, filling that stuff out every day. But picking that up, and staying consistent with it. And then also the brain primers consistently. The brain primers were huge for me. I felt my entire physical body shift, and my mental, just my thought process was shifting as I was consistent with those. And now my son will do them with me too. So we'll do those outside. And the more he does them, I see a difference in his behavior. So whenever he's doing them with me, he's more calm, and he doesn't hit as often, and he doesn't kick the wall as often, and all those little things. So being more consistent with that and inviting him into that process more often.
Oh yeah, that's so important. The brain primers, just for those who don't know what that is, since my son was diagnosed, we have done brain development exercises, physical exercises to rewire the brain to go back and redevelop the skills that were never developed. And so that's something that we do as mothers and as children as we go through this turnaround process as well. What's your next step, and what are some of the tools that you have developed in this turnaround process by understanding yourself and understanding the symptoms and understanding your child more, that you're gonna use to get there?
Yeah, for me, I've landed in this place right now, and I know it's gonna change, or I'm sure it's gonna change, but I'm in that place that you were talking about, Lena, like that calm place. I don't feel great about my daughter's future, which is just like wild. And I don't know if it's not even a logical thing. It's just like a calm thing. And so I want to keep doing the things that keep me in that place, because in that place, I find the answers so much easier with what's needed for her. And so that means, for me, doing the meditation and grounding and journaling daily. The journaling, I've been doing a little trick that I wanted to share with people, that I don't know if other people do this, but I write things to myself in a question form, and then sometimes I'll answer them too, but it does something to my brain where it just takes that extra step of actually thinking, because you kind of get automatic with doing the journal, right? It's really long every day. So I write questions, and then I also have like a personal journal that I've been starting to kind of do my homework in. And that, I think I'm a person that learns from writing, and that's something I've learned from this course. So just taking the time to take things a step further in my journal, not like the content from your journal, but more like if I'm doing the emotional healing audio or something, like making sure I take that step to write it. So yeah, I mean, if we're talking symptoms, the big thing I want to work on is my daughter's sleep. But I'm quite certain the biggest thing is the trust. So that means I need to take better care of myself so she can trust that she doesn't need to. And that's actually something that came up before this course in many different instances. So it's a theme. So I gotta listen to that.
Oh yeah. So important, so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's when we give in to sleep and we just let go to sleep, that's where the subconscious has to be in a state of trust, because when we sleep, we are vulnerable to attacks, to intruders. So our nervous system, which is still a jungle nervous system, will have to, when we're children, feel that our parents can actually create that safe space. And it's interesting that often, because we are so hard on ourselves as mothers, that we don't create that safe space for ourselves, and they know that when we can't really take care of ourselves, that we don't have that extra bandwidth and space to do it for them. So they know us better than we do. So that's really a brilliant observation. I would love for you to just end this beautiful conversation, Adriene, by giving us some insights when it comes to these many protocols and procedures that you've spent so much time and energy and money on, which is still the biggest trend out there. I cannot even describe how many moms I talk to every single month who are confused, overwhelmed, and they try all these different modalities, and some of it works for a little while and then it doesn't. So from someone who's been there and done that, what are some of the most important messages for moms from you about this approach, about why that approach might be a problematic one?
I think if the way you think about autism doesn't change, nothing's going to change. And it doesn't matter what diet or supplement you throw at it. It's not going to be a lasting change. And your kids read you so well, and they reflect everything in you back so beautifully, that if you are this high-strung, do it perfectly. I mean, I can't even tell you how many lists of supplements and what order and what time he receives these things on the fridge. And I was so stressed out about supplement schedules. And did he get them all in, and all of this? And I was the absolute worst person to be around. And he knew it. He knew it. And he didn't make any change. There wasn't peace. There wasn't calm. And so he didn't feel safe. And so he didn't sleep because he didn't have that, that trust, like mom and dad's got this, it adds so much unnecessary stress. And whenever you step out of that way of thinking and you think about, this is happening for me, this is happening to bring calm and peace and healing to our whole family, it's just it's a much calmer way to think about it. But I feel like you can actually see the healing happen much faster. Because I know I have 4 neurotypical children. I have seen such huge changes in their health because of what we've done because of our son. And I strongly believe that this was given to us as a way of helping our entire family step into health. And we're just so much happier now. We're so much happier when we stopped all the supplement schedules and all the crazy diets and all those things. And so I would advise that you just think about, what are you thinking about autism and how that is such a huge piece of the healing puzzle.
Wow. Well, I cannot think of a more beautiful way of ending this conversation. So thank you so much, all of you, for your wisdom and your trust and your care for each other, the love that you have for each other, the protection that I see that you have for each other in the community as well. So I learn so much from you all the time, and I have today on this podcast as well. So I just want to thank you, and may God bless this journey and the next steps, and may we all learn from each other as we move forward through this incredibly crazy journey that we've been chosen for. So we're all inspired, and let's hope that this will bring hope and tools and thoughts and new perspectives to moms out there who do not have the same type of community. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye. You might have a bit of chaos going on in the background, like I have here, dogs and sons, and your life might be a bit more chaotic, more symptoms, less speaking than the lives of these moms who've been through this process. You now know how much patience and dedication it took for them to get there. And I hope this encouraged you, and I hope that it brought you hope if people are telling you there's nothing you can do. And if you tried all the things and nothing seems to work, and you still worry about your child's future, will my child ever be independent? Will I be a caretaker forever? Will my child ever speak? Will my child ever stop the tantrums? Well, I hope this offered some answers for you. And I just wanted to mention again, go to barefootautismwarriors.com, click on case stories, or send me an email, contact@barefootautismwarriors.com, or download one of my free guides on the website and get started understanding and implementing this way of thinking about autism symptoms and ADHD symptoms. That's the first step. Seeing is the first step of changing. If you want to talk to me, we can talk about your current situation and what might be missing and broken for you, and set up a game plan for you. Contact@barefootautismwarriors.com. See you next time.